This is Umar Ahmed for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. We're in New York. Is it fair to say I'm joined by the main man at Top Rank?
No, that would be Bob Arum. You're joined by the Dallas Cowboy fan of Top Rank, Carl Moretti.
I am joined by Carl Moretti. Just tell people what your title is at Top Rank.
This year it's Vice President of Boxing Operations, for whatever that means.
Okay. Well, we've got a few topics to discuss. Obviously, we were in Las Vegas last week for Crawford and Paul. So what did you make of the fight, Carl?
I actually wasn't surprised. I had Terence up by more than the scorecards did. I thought he, did what Terence Crawford does, prove that he's the best fighter in the world. I think where it was, what got lost in translation a little bit is how we got to that point. Virgil Ortiz was supposed to be the mandatory forever. He was always number one. And we were informed by the WBO that they turned it down. Not Virgil Ortiz, but a representative of Virgil Ortiz turned it down. Okay, at that point, I asked the WBO then to make Sean Porter the mandatory because he was number two. And we sent a letter to that effect, making Sean the mandatory. So it wasn't something that just happened by osmosis. There was actually a plan to this. And we appreciate the WBO's efforts, but the whole thing started when Virgil turned it down, or his team turned it down, and we requested that Sean be placed at number one because obviously PBC wasn't doing anything with him, and we knew it was a sellable match. Okay.
A lot of talk, obviously, after the fight about Terence's comments in the post-fight presser, where he said he will be moving on, and he said thanks to everyone. Your thoughts on that?
Well, most of us knew that going in, that was his last fight with us, so it was no surprise. I was a little taken back by how much people reacted to it after the fight because they felt like, this came out of nowhere, but everybody knew that going in. So Terence is right. He's he can run his own business now. He can decide what he wants to do, and he's going to be fine, and we'll be fine, I'm sure.
Okay. But you leave on good terms personally with Terence?
Absolutely, even though he's a Packers fan.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, it's a football thing. It's American football, not European football.
Not the real one.
Right. Well, over here, watch where you say that.
What's your take on this whole situation with Crawford and Spence? Obviously been going on for a while. A lot of fans believe we won't see that fight, Carl.
Listen, as a fan, we all want to see it, because it's one of the best fights you can make in the sport. But I think a lot of things have to fall into place. One, Spence has to really want the fight. And up to this point, his actions or his, whatever you want to call him, hasn't really indicated that he wants to fight Terence Crawford. Two, he has to, or he'd be fighting him after that horrific car accident, which he was lucky to walk away from, and retinal tear. So now you're asking a little bit more to go into Terence Crawford. Three, Spence has to agree on a purse. Four, Terence Crawford has to agree on a purse. Five, someone has to pay for those purses. And six, probably, my guess is that if it was to go over to PBC, Crawford would have to give up some type of futures to Al and how they normally do business. So, if those things can all come together, then we have a great fight. If they don't, then, who knows what remains to be seen.
That situation aside, should Josh Taylor come through Jack Catterall, will Top Rank be approaching Terence about that fight with Josh?
I think so. I mean, if it can be made, again, it's how much does each side want? Where does the fight belong? How much does it generate? And can you meet the demands of both sides? That's what remains to be seen as always. But obviously it's a very intriguing fight. And if Josh was to stay at 140, there's also intriguing fights because it's probably the hottest division in boxing right now.
Okay, let's move on to Teofimo Lopez. Just to let everyone know, we are recording this before his fight with Kambosos Jr.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to Eddie Hearn during the week, and he said that both teams have agreed on a verbal agreement for that fight to be made. I spoke to Teo, and he said, yeah, we did, but that fight has to be at 140 with Haney.
I'm not sure what that means, agreed to fight. Because I don't know, was money discussed? We weren't consulted on it. Sure, it's a fight that you'd like to discuss. Should Teofimo come out on this, on top, which we fully expect him to do. But again, you're talking about, how much does Haney and that brain trust, quote unquote, want for the fight? Realizing that it's Teofimo who's the true lightweight champion, has all the belts and the ring belt and everything else. So again, everybody wants to fight, and then you sit down at a negotiating table and the ball always moves. Yes, we agree. Okay, but we want this, but we want that. So, let's see what happens after this and then go from there.
Is Tank realistic or not?
Probably not. Probably not.
Taylor?
Taylor's realistic if he stays at 140. Sure, I think it's a great storyline because you've got the undisputed at 140 and the undisputed at 135. Maybe a history-making fight for sure. I mean, the press conference. You think this one was good? Wait till that one. That would be epic. So yeah, I think that's certainly realistic.
Just inform fans what the situation moving forward is with Teofimo Lopez as well in terms of the ESPN contract.
He's under contract with Top Rank with ESPN. We were just all up in his dressing room wishing him luck. We expect him to be spectacular tonight. And next week when he goes back to Las Vegas, I'm sure he'll sit down with Bob and their team and his team, and we'll plan out what's next.
Okay, let's talk about some heavyweight action. So a lot of the talk at the moment is how much should Dillian Whyte get if that fight is ordered. Obviously, there's an arbitration case going on. Eddie's pushing for 55-45. Bob and Frank are saying 80-20 is what the WBC said, so that's what it should be.
Well, first it has to get ordered, which it probably does once the courts, do whatever they do. I understand where both sides are, but I think what's being missed here is, I don't know how you get to 55-45. If Dillian Whyte believes he's going to win and take the fight, he should just get in the ring and knock out Tyson Fury if that's what he believes is going to happen. What people seem to forget is 2 fights ago, he was the one who was knocked out, and I think they just stopped counting a couple of weeks ago, even though we beat Povetkin again. So I've never seen a guy who got knocked out cold still become a mandatory for beating the guy who knocked him out. If it's a new way of making mandatories, then I'm going to try it and say, don't worry about it, guys. If you get knocked out, we'll get back, we'll win the thing and everything like that. So my whole thing was, yes, it probably should have been 75-25, maybe 70-30. I doubt it, given his last purse was $350,000. But he got knocked out cold. That you can't dispute. And I think that takes away the argument of these fairer purse bid splits. It's usually after a guy, he was there forever. Yeah, but he was there forever, but he got knocked out. So that sort of wipes that whole thing out. So, let's see how this turns out. But that's, what I think.
Kogan spoke to Joshua in Dubai at the show last night, the Propellum show, and he gave a bit of a coy answer as to whether he will step aside or not. He essentially said he'll consider it, which we've never heard from Joshua or Hearn or that side before. What would kind of like Top Rank's message be to Joshua about that so that Fury Usyk could be made?
Well, for some weird reason, whatever, no matter what happens with these guys' fights, I always thought that AJ and Fury would be one of the biggest fights ever in British history. AJ's lost twice, to Usyk pretty badly and to Andy Ruiz, and yet everybody still talks about Fury Joshua. Now you've got Usyk, who is, pound for pound one of the best fighters out there, top 5 for sure, who has the other 3 belts. So if AJ was to take a fight, with a new trainer, which seems to be heading down that road soon, and let Usyk and Fury fight for the undisputed championship, it makes that fight even bigger afterwards. So I understand the logic. I understand AJ not wanting to do it because at heart he's a fighter and he just wants to prove everybody wrong and fight Usyk again. But, southpaw boxers who can punch a little bit, have the amateur background that they do, and have a good chin aren't the best guys to come back against. I mean, from a matchmaking point of view, there's a lot of other guys that you can look good with and get used to a new trainer, but that's his decision to do, and whatever he does, everybody will respect it because everybody respects AJ.
Well, let's say that rematch happens and the Dillian Whyte fight doesn't get ordered. What is there actually out there for Tyson Fury at the moment?
I heard Joe Joyce's name, but I think they're friendly, so I don't think
Fury said he won't do it.
So fine, you got to respect that. I don't think it'll be a problem finding a heavyweight to fight Tyson Fury because of who Tyson Fury is. It may not be the biggest fight compared to the others, but we certainly don't expect Tyson Fury to sit around and wait again. He'd probably want to fight in February and March, and, hopefully that happens as well, regardless of who's across the ring.
Otto Wallin rematch?
Why not? I mean, if it wasn't for the cut, it really was a one-sided fight. But you know what? I thought Otto Wallin was fighting Dillian Whyte. That shoulder, along with getting knocked out pretty quick, are the 2 greatest recoveries I've ever seen. I got to try that,
Just to close off, Carl, major signings for Top Rank in Keyshawn Davis, Kelvin Davis's brother, and obviously Richard Torres Jr. Just talk to me about that.
Yeah. We have a history of watching the whole Olympics, and who comes out of it. And Keyshawn was somebody that stood out. And Richard, 2 years ago when he got stopped by Jabalov, we said, boy, I don't know if he can do it. But the way he fought in the recent Olympics and his work ethic, I mean, Keyshawn told me he has the best work ethic out of all the whole amateur team. We met with both families. We spoke to both families directly. That's who we negotiated with. And, it takes some time. It took a little bit of work, a couple of airline tickets to Fresno and to Norfolk, Virginia. But, I think the easiest thing was doing was, rather than tell them what I do or what this person does, we were in restaurants when we met with them. And when we were walking out, they were basically sports bars. And there was 20 TVs, flat screen TVs, and every one of them had ESPN on. Not a streaming platform, not a cable station or anything like that. I said, you guys want to be stars? Just look up there. And they got it. Because that's where they want to be. They want to be on television. They want to be known and everything like that. And I think that's what sealed the deal, along with a check for each guy. But more so, they want to be stars, and the work ethic's there. And we'll see Keyshawn here December 11th. He can't wait. And his brother Kelvin, who's a pretty good fighter himself. And Richard will turn pro the first part of next year.
Future's definitely bright. Well, listen, best of luck with the show, December 11th. Live on Sky Sports, obviously, in the UK. Lama v. Commie.
Yep.
And, of course, ESPN over here in the States. Thank you, Carl.
Good stuff. Thank you.